Scott Fujita, who was a New Orleans Saint that night and a champion New Orleans Saint, and also one of the producers of Gleason, a documentary about Steve Gleason that you just cannot miss, joining us back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Scott?
Rich, doing great. Good morning. I can't believe it's been 10 years already.
10 years. 10 years. What was that like that night, Scott?
Unreal. I mean, hard to put into words as we have tried so hard many times throughout these last 10 years. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was like. It was electric and all the typical cliche things that we talk about, but I just always say it was one of those moments that was so much bigger than just football.
Did you drive to the game, walk? How'd you get to the game that night?
I drove, and it's interesting because a lot of us, that was our first game experience at the Superdome, those of us who had just joined the team. Huh. So trying to get there and, find your parking lot and knowing how to get through security and where's the locker room, all those kind of things that typically you'd be pretty well versed on through the preseason. We didn't have our preseason there at the Superdome, so it was new to all of us.
What was the scene like in New Orleans getting to the game?
It was pretty awesome. I remember, and typically when I drive to one of my home games, I have the windows down, music blaring, I have my playlist. But this is one of those times where I had my music completely shut off because I wanted to just experience all of New Orleans on the drive into the Superdome. I wanted to see everybody out in the streets celebrating and tailgating, and I wanted to smell the barbecue. I wanted to hear the music just to kind of take in as much of it as I could because I think we all sensed that it was a big deal, especially those of us who are new and were just getting entrenched in that community. You could just sense how big this was to so many people, and I wanted to experience the whole thing, not just football, the whole picture.
Yeah, whenever NFL Network has a game there or whenever I'm there for a game, I like to walk there. New Orleans, by the way, just one of the best walk-in cities there is, and if weather permitting, I just love walking there and just getting all of the familiarity and the sights and sounds and smells, as you say, too, Scott. I'm the same way.
It really is one of the best walking cities I've ever been to, and we lived about 6 or 7 blocks from the Superdome. So all my friends and family, when they'd come to games, they'd walk. And it's something about every street and crack in the sidewalk seems to tell a different story, and that's just what makes that place so special and just rich and soulful. And that's why we all fell in love with it the way we did.
Scott Fujita joining me here on the show. Okay, kickoff. What was that like?
It felt like, hey, we did this. And it's funny because a few nights before that, Sean Payton had a team practice there in the Superdome. And that was the first time a lot of us had actually set foot in the building. I think he did that to take the edge off a little bit. But another thing that was interesting about that night is he brought out a lot of the crew who were responsible for getting the Superdome back in the shape to be ready for that Monday night game. So to see them and hear their story and recognize how much work was put in to getting the stadium ready to go, at that kickoff moment, it's like, wow, here we are. And all the work that went into this, it's here, it's upon us. And it was a pretty good feeling.
Were there any individuals there who were part of the shelter months of the Superdome that opened it up and some of the human tragedy and awfulness that went down in that building? Were there some people there that night too, Scott?
And I don't know about that night, but I did meet a number of those folks in the months leading up to that game. And I lived right in the heart of the city, so I was out in the community quite a bit. And I really just wanted to get to know people. I wanted to know the story, and I wanted to hear individual stories. So to connect with a lot of that, again, it just makes, like I said before, this whole thing so much bigger than just football.
And I was telling the story in the first segment of the show, that being there, I was sitting next to Marshall Faulk, a native son of New Orleans, whose high school was wiped off the planet by Hurricane Katrina, gone. History, the place where he grew up and played and went to high school is gone. And I just saw the emotion in his face. He sold popcorn once as a kid in the Superdome. Just sitting next to him and seeing how meaningful it was. It really wasn't lost on me. And then the game starts, and Vic fumbles the ball. Ball's loose. Who was the guy who knocked that ball loose, Scott?
Yeah, that was the younger, faster version of Scott Fujita who made that play. We came out, and that was interesting because that was a game where we came in 2-0, started the season with 2 road wins against the Browns and the Packers, who weren't exactly lighting the world on fire. Our preseason was pretty dismal. We didn't really know what we had. It was a bunch of like castaways from other teams with a handful of holdovers. So guys like Drew, who we didn't know what he was going to be able to do. Guys like me, Scott Shanley, Mark Semino, sort of castaways from other programs coming together and just like bonding with this really unique community. So that game, it was certainly emotional, and we had that emotional wave, but we really didn't know if we were any good or not. So to come out against a Falcons team that was rolling up on people those first couple of weeks, running the ball for like 300 yards a game, And first down, we stop him. Second down, we stop him. It's about 3rd and 6 or 7. Vic rolls out for a little bootleg pass, and I managed to kind of beat him to the corner and punch the ball out. And one of our safeties almost scooped it and ran it in for a touchdown. So I'm accused by a lot of people of almost single-handedly preventing the biggest play in Saints history from happening.
But that would have been just a different situation. But when you think about it in retrospect, Scott, and who Steve Gleason is and what he means to you and what you mean to him, isn't that the most fortunate situation for you and everybody involved, that it wasn't a big play by you, that it did set the stage for something that Steve was able to do? Think about that.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. It's one of those things that almost feels divine. You know, looking back on it, it was drawn up the way it was supposed to be. And I like to joke with people and say, hey, I served up the assist for that to happen for Steve. But it was awesome. And I felt like I was pretty hot stuff at the moment. And I'm, flexing and, doing my little signature bow and hooting and hollering, hey, man, I arrived. I did this. I'm awesome. And then Steve comes in, next play, blocks the punt, and the rest is history. Could not have drawn it up any better for that moment for Steve to make a play like that.
What was awesome. What was it like when that ball was blocked by Steve? Walk me through the scene there.
I always hear Drew explain this the best. It was like a shotgun blast. And Sean Payton always talks about the double thump of a punt block. The ball punting off of the punter's foot, and then the block of the ball hitting the defensive player's hands. So it was that double thump. And you every time you hear that sound, you know what it is, a punt's been blocked. And just the uproar in the stadium, it lasted minutes. I mean, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes of just absolute pandemonium. I think for all of us who were there on the sidelines and to take the moment to turn around and face the crowd, and you just see the emotion and the tears streaming down faces and just the authentic sense of celebration, it just felt like, hey, this is an announcement to the world. We are all back, and we're all back together. How's Steve? He's doing great. He'll be there at the game tonight. He's fired up and busy as ever, and he's been doing awesome. It's funny because if you ask Steve, in many respects, he feels like he's beat this thing. And those of you who are just tuning in, Steve, of course, was diagnosed with ALS just over 5 years ago. But he's still doing all the things he wants to do. He has a great care team. He's going to all the Saints games, picking up his son Rivers from school every day. So there's no quitting this guy. So he'll be there tonight. He'll be there tonight. He goes to most of the Saints games, and he'll be there. I imagine he'll be with the team on the sideline pregame. Actually, he'll be meeting Arthur Blank, Falcons owner, for the first time in person. And Mr. Blank, for those of you who have not heard, donated $100,000 to Team Gleason just about a month and a half ago after a special screening of the film in Atlanta. So it'll be great for Mr. Blank and Steve to meet in person. How can people get involved? TeamGleason.org still? Go there? TeamGleason.org. Yeah, all the information is there to learn more about Steve and the foundation. It's been an awesome thing to be a part of. Well, you're awesome too, Scott. What you've done with Steve and what you've done with him and how tight you are with the family. And, I mean, it's pretty incredible he's going to be there tonight, right? After all that he's been through? Yeah, he still goes to practices, and he's around the team a lot. And just the team, I think it sort of sets the bar about how teams can take care of their former players. Much like with Baltimore and O.J. Brigance. It's just, I think those are model franchises in taking care of their own, and they've really brought Steve into the fold, and he's such a present part of that community. So I guess is happy anniversary the best way to say to end this? Happy anniversary, Scott? I would say so. It was a happy night that night, and it's a great opportunity for everyone to come back and be nostalgic and to celebrate all that's been accomplished in these last 10 years. Let me know when you're down here in L.A. We'll have you back on, okay, Scott? Okay, sounds good. Appreciate it, Rich. You're the man. That's Scott Fujita.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.